It's Neil here, the host of a Vietnam podcast, and thank you so much for listening to this show. As you probably know already, this is a show where I share stories of people connected to Vietnam from here in Vietnam and all over the world, and even more so as we're in season 10 now, I'm sharing more and more of my own story as I've now been here for over 8 years. Over the years of this podcast, since we started in 2019, we've dived deep into the heart and the soul of Vietnam's vibrant modern culture, and also what really makes it such a special and, shall we say, interesting place to be. It's been really exciting to see a vibrant in Vietnam recognised more and more on the world stage, none more so than people like Sarah Nguyen in New York with the Nguyen Coffee Supply, which has just gone from strength to strength since we interviewed her, and so many other Vietnamese people around the world being recognised for their achievements. As you probably know, Vietnam is so much more than the war, so much more going on, and part of this podcast is to share these stories, to show the real Vietnam. So I really hope that you've been loving these episodes, and if you want to dive deeper into our community of passionate listeners, then we have restarted our Patreon so that we can build a community of people, and we're calling that community the Bop Sao Dares. So if you want to become a Bop Sao Dare on Patreon, you can become part of something special. Not only will I be sharing exclusive behind the scenes content, giving you early access to episodes, we're going to look at having virtual and in-person hangouts, which we've done before, where we can chat about everything and anything you want, from the best spots to eat Cum Tam, is it true that the dirtier the restaurant, the better the food, where we can get cheap beer, good beer, craft beer, good cocktails, bad cocktails, and all the latest happenings in Saigon and across Vietnam. I want to give a massive thank you to Fiona and Adam Thompson, Tracy Wright, Dan Jones, Andrew Barry, and Brandon Thompson for being part of our community from the beginning. And these guys are now the coolest Bop Sao Dares that you can ever meet. So if you want to become as cool as them, you can choose a level that suits you. You can become a Cafe Sua Da, a Banh Mi, a Cum Tam, a Bun Tet Nung, or the ultimate level, you can become a Bop Sao Dare. So join these guys in our community, become a Bop Sao Dare today, join the fun with me, and let's explore Vietnam together like never before. So hit that link in the show notes and join my podcasting adventure of a Vietnam podcast today. Cheers!
Hello, I'm Steve Ahern, one of the judges of the Asia Podcast Awards. I'm interrupting this episode to let you know that you're listening to an award-winning podcast. This podcast won its category in the 2024 Podcast Awards, so you know you're listening to quality. Enjoy your listening experience, and congratulations to the team who created this award-winning podcast for you.
Hey, it's your host Neil Mackay of a Vietnam podcast, and I'm bringing you this very special episode to share some really exciting news. A couple of months ago, I nominated a Vietnam podcast and myself to the Radio Days Asia Podcast Awards that were held in Kuala Lumpur, and one of them was for Best Interview Podcast, and the other one was for Best Audio Producer. So a Vietnam podcast has been going since 2019. I've learned so much in that time, and I decided this was the right opportunity to put myself forward against podcasts from Japan, India, Myanmar, Philippines, all over Asia, and see how it went. I literally had no expectations, didn't think anything would happen, but I thought it would be a fun experience to do it anyway. And then last week, I got the news back from the Radio Days conference that we had won Best Interview Podcast in all of Asia for a Vietnam podcast. And I was absolutely blown away. I couldn't believe it. So thank you very much to you for listening. Thank you to everyone who's provided support over the years, everyone who's listened. It's been absolutely incredible, and I'm so excited to share this award with you. And then the second award was the Audio Producer of the Year award because I'm really proud of the work that I do and our small team does in making podcasts for other people. Since the pandemic, when I lost my job, I decided to go full-time and create my own business called 7 Million Bikes Podcast. And we've now worked with over 40 podcasts from around the world, helped produce over 700 episodes, and helped podcasts like A Vietnam Podcast get to the top of the Apple Podcast charts. So that has been an incredible journey, and we nominated myself as Audio Producer of the Year, thanks to the Redlines Podcast, which is a podcast all about the architecture industry. And I've been working with those guys for about a year. And that is the most exciting podcast I've worked on because it's more than just a regular interview podcast. When they came to me, they asked me, can I create a narrative? So it's really exciting. I get to take the raw audio, which sometimes can be an hour and a half to 2 hours of quite a harrowing conversation, and turn it into a linear narrative. And then one of the most exciting things as well is adding music to it. And even more exciting is I leave notes for the hosts of what I think that they should say. So we kind of call them like interludes or interjections. So as the podcast goes along and you hear a podcast and the host interrupts and says something. And the coolest thing is I write these notes down thinking that it will just give them a guide of what they have to say. And then they send it back to me and they've almost said word for word exactly what I've written down, which this is about an industry that I've never been a part of. I'm only learning about it through making the podcast. And so to me, sometimes I think maybe I'm writing something that's absolute nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. But to these two esteemed people from the architecture industry, they read what I say, what I suggest, and think it's good enough to repeat it exactly. So that is amazing. So what I wanted to share with you today was I had to submit 2 entries to the Radio Days Awards, no more than 5 minutes. And so for A Vietnam Podcast, I took the beginning part, so you'll have noticed over the last couple of years that we now take about 30 seconds of the best audio, the most intriguing or controversial, and we put it at the beginning of each episode to hopefully make you interested in listening to that full episode and get excited about it as well. And it's one of the coolest things as a producer and as a podcaster is going through and taking those little clips to share with you and putting them at the beginning and making it exciting. So we do that now with all of the podcasts that we produce. And for my entry into the Radio Days Awards, I took about 5 minutes worth of those little entry clips, the beginning clips at the beginning of A Vietnam Podcast, put them all together, and that was part of my entry, as well as obviously putting in documentation and things like that. So this clip that I'm about to play for you is the 5-minute clip that I submitted to the Radio Days Asia Awards that won or helped win A Vietnam Podcast, the best interview podcast in all of Asia, which is still incredible to say out loud. Then the second clip you're going to hear is a sample of audio that I've taken with permission from the Redlines Podcast. And I want to give a massive thanks to Jake Rudden and Aaron Pellegrino for agreeing to allow me to submit that audio, because at the end of the day, it's their audio, they own it, I just produce it. But not only that, Aaron wrote me an amazing letter of recommendation to go with it as well. And thanks to them, and thanks to this piece of audio that I submitted, I incredibly was able to win Best Audio Producer of the Year. So thank you again to everyone for listening. Thank you for everyone who supported the podcast from the very beginning. Thank you to Aaron. Thank you to Jake. Obviously, Lewis Wright helped create the music and has been massively supportive with all the audio from the very beginning. And most of all, massive thanks to my wife, Adria Lopez Mackay, for everything that she does to support me and the podcast. None of this would have been possible without her. So enjoy this little bit of audio. I'm excited to tell you that you are listening to an award-winning podcast from an award-winning producer. Enjoy.
Hello, I'm Steve Ahern, one of the judges of the Asia Podcast Awards. I'm interrupting this episode to let you know that you're listening to an award-winning podcast. This podcast won its category in the 2024 Podcast Awards, so you know you're listening to quality. Enjoy your listening experience, and congratulations to the team who created this award-winning podcast for you.
Welcome to Season 10 of A Vietnam Podcast. I'm your host, Neil Mackay. I came to Vietnam for a holiday all the way back in 2015 and absolutely fell in love with the place. Couldn't wait to come back. Came back in 2016, about 2 months just to learn how to teach English, then was going to go on my merry way with my wife, and we decided to stay for a year. A year became 2, 2 became 4, and 4 became 8. And it'll be a decade before I know it. During that time, I started a Vietnam podcast, and I got to meet some amazing and interesting people. There are misconceptions about Vietnam. People just think of water buffaloes, rice paddies, and lanterns. If you live in the big city like Saigon, it's just like any other big city. There's buildings, there's transport, there's cars, there's bikes, there's food, there's cocktails, there's beer. There's all the same things as in any other city, but Saigon is really special.
Since the lockdown lifted, everybody gets back to normal. And that is why I didn't have a chance to work with Best Ever Food Review ever again. I still run Easy English and Easy Vietnamese. I also spent the last year focusing on content creating on my old channel on Instagram. I started making a lot of reels on Instagram and it picked up. I think it's quite tricky because you kind of have to put yourself out there all the time.
I don't want to beauty whoever was Twacey back in 2017, 2018. There is like, I've hurt people. I've deeply hurt people. I've deeply used people, and I've deeply used myself, and I deeply unloved myself. And so there was a lot of work that I needed to do, and I'm still doing.
I don't know what they do. There is some sort of magic that they put into the whiskey sour that just makes it taste incredible.
I kind of traveled around Southeast Asia, came to Vietnam, and just had this brilliant idea of how would it be I would like really live here. I grew up with different cultures, one at home, which was Vietnamese, and one outside of home in school. My surrounding, my social surrounding was very Swiss, on the other hand.
It's me, Neil Mackay, your host of a Vietnam podcast. I'm going to host an episode all by myself, and I'm a little bit scared to do that. I'm going to share with you my 7 top places to go in Saigon for craft beer. An OG legend. If you're going to get food, definitely get the chicken wings, but they are really spicy. I think it is the best tasting beer. It is Western priced. I think they are catering to that market, which can afford that price. Now, number 6 is not a craft beer bar at all, but it sells their own beer. They don't give you free water, which to me is immoral and insane to be serving beer so strong and not offer free water to your customers.
COVID actually opened my eyes to tell me like, bro, listen, take it easy. Now look at you. You were shut down. What can you do? You can't even manage things. You can't even control it. That is exactly how this life is. Like things you think make sense actually makes no sense. Think about all these things and you start to realize that all this hustle, all this busy, all this stress, do they actually worth it? You just don't live. Like I always tell people, don't live to work, work to live.
Why are you laughing? Did it go down the wrong way? Yes. That's amazing that you managed to spit it into your cup and not that way.
Ooh, we are recording.
Hột gà nướng, hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, bắp xào đây. Bắp xào đây.
And then all of a sudden, a dead stop, right? With no hint of this was the specific conflict, right?
Yes, no hint.
That is wild.
My client just said they're being so demanding, problematic, so stop responding. I'm like, okay. And truly, they were very aggressive. They would call me
multiple times a day asking for CAD files, asking for city records that we've submitted. So my response is actually it's online. You can look it up. It's public records. So yeah, and me like having to respond saying contact this lawyer instead. It's already, but it did not give me a clue for what was to come. And yeah, I was completely shocked. I think I didn't even, I gave it to my company lawyer. Like, can you figure out who these people are? Like, is this a mistake? Like, never heard none of the email communication with these investors. So anyway, so when I finally found out who they were, I contacted my client and I found out that he was sued in another state by them because they were doing multiple projects in many different states. And I'm only involved in the one here in California. So he said they're out of their mind. They don't know how the US works because they're foreign investors. They're not locals, they're not Americans. So I responded and now the pandemic was also starting on top of the whole challenge of the lawsuits.
Great timing. Just great timing.
Yeah, amazing.
And I was initially quite excited about the invite and I really felt honored and I felt like finally someone's actually recognizing and appreciating the work I've been doing outside of my office.
Listen to just some of the skills that are mentioned there: computational design, construction knowledge, the desire to bridge academia and research with practice, and technical coordination, just to name a few. As architects, we learn and employ so many skills in our jobs, but we do hear the same stories time and time again of being underappreciated and undervalued. But in some cases, it gets even worse than this.
Did either of you put this studio on your resume?
Oh, yes, I did. I was not about to not use their name, their renowned name for after all the amazing stuff I went through. There was no way I was not using that.
Oh yeah, I sometimes I think about all the free work I did, and in a way we actually produced way more than any other internship. We made whole pieces of furniture, we built parts of the structure, built parts of other mini models, and I felt like we deserve it to put it on our resume. That's the least they can offer us, right, in terms of helping us in our careers. Because other than that, they really did not mentor us in any way. I don't think they really cared about us in any way. So in a way, it is a little bit funny thinking about it now, but it's this strange relationship that we have with these toxic environments.
Well, I think you both deserve to have it on your resume in 32-point font for everything you went through.
So thank you again for listening to this. Thank you for all your loving support. I cannot believe that I can now say A Vietnam Podcast is the best interview podcast in all of Asia. And I have won the award for the best audio producer for the work I do on all of the podcasts. So thank you to everyone we work with. Thank you to you. This is absolutely incredible. I still can't believe it. Don't forget, I got to tell you, turn on notifications, follow, subscribe. And best of all, if you think that A Vietnam Podcast is a good show and you like it, then please share it with somebody else who also loves Vietnam as well. And we can build this community together, which you can join as well on patreon.com/A Vietnam Podcast, where you may already be listening to this episode early, if you remember. So jump on there and join our community. And once again, thank you very much. Cheers.
Hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, mất sao đây? Mất sao đây?
this is Neil Mackay, your host of A Vietnam Podcast. Now, before we get started on this episode, I wanted to share with you about one of my favourite affiliate partners, and that is Fiverr. I've been using Fiverr for years for everything from ordering YouTube thumbnails to keyword research, writing podcast articles, even to Canva designs and thumbnails and more. So whether you're a budding entrepreneur, a podcaster, or anyone in between, Fiverr has got you covered. It really is the go-to platform if you want to find freelancers offering a massive range of services to help you on any project. Maybe you need a stunning new logo or just a short animation, whatever you need, you can find it on Fiverr. What I love the most is how easy Fiverr makes it to connect with talented freelancers from around the world, all at prices that will fit whatever your budget is. Plus, with Fiverr's secure payment system, you can trust that your transactions are safe and secure. No dodgy people you meet on Facebook groups that disappear with your money and never give you what you want. What, that's only happened to me? As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you use the link and at no extra cost to you. As an affiliate partner, I will get a small commission if you click my link and you buy something, all at no extra cost to you. And best of all, you will be directly supporting the making of this podcast that you're listening to for free, but it is not free to make. So why wait? Head over to somewhere that you've probably never been before. It's called the show notes. So whatever app you're listening in, if it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything at all, head to the show notes, click on my special link, and then you can browse thousands of gigs ready to help you with your next project. And now, let's dive into today's episode. Let's go.